came over here, and we were like, oh my God, my head is red. And then I kind of did this to see it. I went, oh, okay.
Ah,
That's kind of a little
thank you. She wrote it. I just like, maybe we need like
She suggested it.
I did say,
I tried to cut the tip of it off.
oh, you were trying to do that?
Yeah, well,
Not on purpose.
I was like, maybe we need a little something, and it tells people like the live stream and yeah, all that
good
stuff.
stuff.
Well, when we did this, I didn't know that he was going to be here. I knew that last time he kind of led the charge. So
Hey, Mike's here. There's more board.
I'm like, yes, you are. I'm like,
So there's
this is
more board showing up than we thought. So how do you want to do this? Do you want the board up front again?
there's
Or
enough
not?
here.
Or what do you want to do? Because there's way more board than we thought we had.
good.
Let them sit up front.
Okay. You guys can sit
We
here,
can
maybe.
sit, yeah, we'll sit right here. We'll be close to Amy.
She tried to get out and sitting in the front. I, however, am sitting in the front.
Sit right here.
Twice in one day. Do you want me to tell the word?
So I'll float around and ask the word if they'll sit.
She just I'm saving it.
We just, honestly, I wasn't sure how many, so we just filled the whole chair.
Okay, we can go every other one then. Gosh, you know, Jan and Ron Michael came back from Philadelphia, both here. But there's one thing about getting them together, so you don't have to.
Well, there's not separate because our first time, our family had it like together. And we were like quarantined for us. It was and I hope it I don't mind lots of people around, whether they like it or not.
I brought something.
No, that's good to know. Like, I didn't know. If you have any Amy's gonna monitor the live chat on the YouTube live chat, and she's gonna share them.
That also, do you have your gallbladder? I also could be that's where my parents used to get their gallbladder taken before they had it out. If you notice that one,
Chris, you guys may need to fill in. There's only actually 4.
hey, if anyone,
You guys could fill in. You could fill in.
we were also getting some comments that it wasn't in the paper and it wasn't in the paper, and I saw it. So
Well, good.
there was one time I did. So then
Was it in there 2 weeks?
asking? We asked for it to be in there 3. We asked. For it
Yeah,
to be
you're
in there
gonna.
3.
Sitting up front?
I'm gonna have the board pick where they want, and then you guys fill in.
Okay.
So,
I'll just do my sheet. How'd you get that job?
I had this job last year with the website because Molly's in the back managing. So
I will come sit up there, but I have no. I brought my board. So
I need to go in and change my settings so it doesn't go to password. I'm trying to remember where to do that. We are, but that's not generally what happens. That's ideal. Do you remember where to do that, Krista?
I didn't know they did that. They do that. They do that. Yeah, please, just put it on.
Privacy.
Jeannie? We have enough, yeah.
Oh, she remembers.
Are we on?
I was adjusting my settings and I couldn't remember where it was.
All right, hey, hold on. Beth, this is your actual, no, here. This is your microphone.
What? Oh, sorry.
That's your actual microphone. Oh. This is an amplifier.
Oh, okay. We're using. Can everybody hear me?
I tried.
Hello, hello. I will always be a math professor at heart, so I'll gather the class now. Welcome. We do have folks on the live stream as well, and I will have everybody introduce themselves. We have the cabinet and members of the board here. There are several members of the board who are also joining us virtually, so you can hear from them as well. I just want to do a little bit of talk about what this is. So welcome. We've set this time. We have set this time aside to listen to your comments, concerns. Please watch the cord near the black microphone. This is to amplify sound for those listening on live stream. In case you want to tell someone else who isn't here that they can find the link from the website, our website, bethanylb.edu. Those on live stream can share comments and etc., and Amy over there will be the one getting them for us. We have 2 wireless microphones that will help with sound in the chapel, so please talk into the wireless mic. Please raise your hand and we will get a microphone around to you if you have a question. So, everybody got it? The other thing is, this really is a listening session. We started this about 6 months ago. We'd like to hear from you about, with your, as we said, your comments and concerns, or heck, even joys. We certainly can answer questions, but that is the idea with this. I will also let you know that on August 16th, we are going to have our all-campus meeting, and unless COVID gets us all again, it's our intention to do that live. What we will do is, I will be, I think we're in here again, aren't we? In here,
Yes.
And giving an opening of campus address. We will have information like budget numbers, cash flow numbers, numbers on what we have been able to raise in the last year. I can tell you right now that it's been a good year, but today is the last day of the fiscal year, so we don't have all those numbers solidified yet, but we will have those by August 16th. And as I said, we'll drop a video at the same time I give the speech on August 16th. So if you can't be here, then that's okay, but if you think you can join us. So I'm going to now step aside, and I'm just going to let everybody introduce themselves, and we're going to start with Amy.
Pass that down.
Yeah, I'll pass this down. We'll start with Amy. Yeah.
Good evening. Amy Bauer, Vice President of Administration, General Counsel.
Jeannie Lucas, Vice President of Human Capital Management.
I'm Roper DeGarmo, and as of tomorrow, I'll be the immediate past chair of the board of Bethany College.
Carol Gasenius, class of 1973.
Jim Martin, class of 1968, and thank you, Roper, for the last 3 years.
Becky Anderson, class of 69, and I also want to echo a thanks to Roper. Thank you very much.
Mike Dreyer, class of 97. Thank you, Roper.
Krista Harris, class of 97, and I'm current CFO.
Matt Faunenstill, class of 2006, and serve as the Vice President of Student Affairs.
Laura Moreno, class of 2009, Dean of Athletics.
Adam Pryor, I went someplace else. I'm the provost.
So thank you to everyone. You don't want to be, I think maybe as your last thing. Okay.
So this is the last time I have to talk, I think. But all I would say is that if you had told me 3 years ago, and more importantly, 2 years ago, where we would be at a footing as Bethany College and with the leadership of President Malk, I would have not, frankly, I'm too pessimistic, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought there's no way we're going to come through the things that we've come through over the past 2 years in particular and be where we are. So I want to offer a sincere thank you to President Malk for her leadership and her steady hand through these really troubling times. Other than that, it's been an honor to serve as chair. I have 2 more years on the board, and I'm excited to take a step back and do some other things on there and let others step up. And so, Becky, thank you for stepping up in a leadership role. It's a big responsibility, and I appreciate you doing that. Becky will be our incoming secretary of the board. That's all I got. And Cheryl is online. Thank you, Cheryl. Will be the incoming chair, Cheryl Rasmussen. Anyone would say class of something? And then Rob Habiger is stepping in as vice chair. And both are very active and engaged, I can tell you. We've been meeting regularly for the last 4 or 5 weeks, and so they're excited to step into those roles. So, thank you. And with that, I think we open it up to questions, comments.
Here, I'm going to give you this microphone, just that way everybody online can hear you too.
Tell us about the curriculum transformation. I think maybe, I don't know if that's the word, the Pathway program.
Oh, yeah, they're all letting me do it. Oh, he's going to fill in. I think the provost should talk about it. Sure. So what we have been undertaking for a little over the last year has been a strategic planning process to really guide Bethany College for about the next 5 years. One of the things we really did, and frankly, we've done most of this online on Zoom, which certainly hasn't been easy, but we've kind of got it done, was to really look at our history and see what is it that Bethany has done. One of our board members just said to me the other day, what is it that Bethany stands for? I usually pick on Jim. This path to your purpose really is, I think, one of the fundamental principles and one of the fundamental guiding posts of what Bethany College has always been back to our founding. And what Path to Your Purpose really is it's about the transformation that our students undergo while they are here at Bethany College. First of all, with our fantastic curriculum, but then how we've been able to, really since our founding, tie that curriculum to what today we like to call real-world experiences or internships or experiential learning, so that students can really find who they are. Back to our very beginning, if you even go back to the 1884 to 1885 catalog for Bethany College, they were talking back then about the fact that this place was special because we had, as an example, in a business program, not only really fantastic business curriculum, but also opportunities for our students to work at what was called the Bethany Bank. It was around until about 1905, but practical real-world experiences for students who were coming through Bethany's curriculum. And in addition, what they talked about was this opportunity for our students to really have this in a Christian environment, have it in an environment where students didn't have to necessarily be in, I guess what I'd call the rat race, where they really were looking at not only how they were going to get into a career, but how they were going to take that career and make it into their vocation. And frankly, that foundation is what we continue to today. Our students have internship opportunities, if I'll just pick the business curriculum if I can, to go out into the community. But they're also doing it at Bethany College, where we are in mission to the ELCA, where students have this opportunity to really see what is my vocation, not just what is my job. The other thing that has been so important about Bethany College through the years is that we have modified our curriculum as we go to make that curriculum make sense and be meaningful for our students even today. So I've picked business, but you could pick music, you could pick any one of a number of our majors, and that's what has happened to our students. And what we're going to do now over the next couple of years is really just put that into a more public practice, I think is what I would say, so that we know that our students get these experiences. We want to make sure that we are thinking about what those experiences are for our students as they go through. So what you will start to see is explanations on our website of what are some of the experiences that our students have that really get them from, in some sense, like an 18-year-old and have this transformation. So you should see some of those experiences coming up. Recently, I just had one on the Facebook page about a student who was working with our counselor here on campus looking at mental health for students. So those are the kinds of experiences, not just experiences that they can take and think about as their job, but experiences that they can take and really help to see how they can become a meaningful member of their community, which really does go back to our founding. So it's path to your purpose, but it's something that's been here since our very foundation. You want to fill anything in? Oh, wait, you have to get the mic.
It's so that people online can hear as well.
I was just wondering about plans for the new chaplain, and also what would the job description look like?
I'm going to let you take that one.
Thank you.
Yeah, right. No, so the ministry site profile for Bethany College was just completed with the ELCA. So if you're not an insider to the ELCA process, you don't get to just go out and write a job description and post it in, the Salina newspaper and say, we'd like a pastor. There are a variety of steps that you need to go through first. It's really a period of discernment for the college before we even engage in any process of interviewing candidates. That's really traditionally about a 5 to 6 month process. We were 4 months. We moved things along as best we could. That ministry site profile is now available on the Central States Senate. It was just posted yesterday, and so we are actively ready now to begin the interview process with potential candidates going forward. Our intention is to have a candidate who can reach out to the diversity of students that we have on this campus. Bethany College is a wildly diverse ethnically, in terms of sexual identity, in terms of the various ways in which students who are 18 are coming to college now. We are as diverse a place as you will find in the country for a college and university. And we need a chaplain who is aware and sensitive and able to work with that wild diversity of students that we have. Students from Western Kansas, right, who grew up in a town of 200 people, and Lindsborg is a new large metropolis, to the kid who came from South Central LA and grew up in a historically African American community and has now been dropped into Central Kansas and gone, wait, where am I? Both of those students need a pastor who can really speak to them. And so the team that was putting together the ministry site profile really wanted to be sensitive to that diversity. So we are hoping that that process will be underway, that we will start interviews. We have internal target dates for where we're hoping this will go, but as with any call in the ELCA right now, it can be a long process. So we are moving at a pace that I think we expected, a little faster than I think we thought, and we're pleased with that.
Will you try to have a person in place by the next school year?
Probably not by August. That would be wildly optimistic on my take. I think what you will see is, hopefully we'll see somebody, I would love to see somebody really in place by January. I think that's a realistic timeline.
You have another question, so I can sign it.
I will continue to stand here.
An online question, and I can't pronounce the username. What is the plan for diversity, equity, and inclusion? And then a comment after that from the same person says the board staff does not reflect that diversity, maybe what you just talked about.
Yeah, sure. I don't think it's really hard to see if you look around that the faculty staff board do not look the same as our student body anymore. And that is something that we are actively thinking about and working on. So I think one of the things that's most exciting about the new strategic plan that's coming out is that it really places an emphasis on diversity, equity, and inclusion, particularly thinking about Hispanic students in relation to campus, which is actually our largest minority population on the campus right now. So using that and using some different hiring techniques than maybe have been used in higher ed traditionally in the past, something called cluster hiring or variation on cluster hiring. One of the main goals, I think, in the next 3 years is to start seeing that the way in which we know institutionally we value diversity, equity, and inclusion is being operationalized into outputs that are more tangible.
So as far as board diversity, we are extraordinarily aware that we do not currently represent the students, the diversity of our students. Part of that is we have a history of not being quite as diverse, so we're pulling from a pool that isn't so diverse. But if anybody online or anyone in this room knows anybody who you think would be a good candidate to serve on the board, you can still go to bethanyboard.com and put in a form to nominate somebody, or you can just tell one of these friendly faces the person that you think, and we do actually then go recruit them. Like it would be nice if you talked to them before you threw their name in the hat, but we do know that having representation on the board is extremely important, and we're even talking about ways to pull from further areas in the country where it's hard to come back 3 or 4 times a year, and maybe come up with some ways that people could serve in leadership roles and not have to fly across the country all the time. But please bring those names to us. We're eager to be represented.
Okay, we have another online question. It says, what does an interim pastor look like then?
I get the fun questions. An interim pastor in the ELCA right now is one of the most difficult calls to make. There is simply a national shortage of interim ministers. For Colorado and the Grand Canyon Synod, for those of you playing inside the ballpark in ELCA, they have a shared roster of interim ministers. For all of the churches in those 2 synods, there are a grand total of 18, 2 of which are going to be retiring soon. I've been calling them. In all likelihood, I will continue to work to find an interim minister for the fall. I am prepared for the idea that we may not have an interim minister. I will also say both of the bishops who have served on the board have been incredibly supportive in trying to help us find and fill that position. And it is truly a sense of the lack and national shortage of pastors, which is being felt first in interim ministry. It's one of the most difficult ministries for a pastor to really serve in for long periods of time.
What does next year's enrollment look like?
I love the numbers question, so thank you. So one of the things that we have really been working on, I think as you all know, when I was first named president, we really worked on our budget, and that is something I think that we have continued to work on, and we've had a lot of success in ensuring that we had a budget that allowed us to make decisions and be something that we could have faith in what we had. The second thing we've been working on is our enrollment. And as again, one of our board members said at our May board meeting, we're no longer hoping for an enrollment, we are planning for an enrollment, and that's been something we've worked on. So we plan to have 700 students on our campus this fall, 375 returners and 325 new students. Right now we are tracking on those 2 numbers. Given the historical data that we have, that should be within epsilon an attainable number for us to get. So we're probably looking at around 700 students, which keeps us about flat for these last couple of years, which if you're starting to see around the country, you're starting to see enrollment declines. We are not finding that at Bethany College right now.
along those lines, I remember when I was on the staff at Bethany, retention was something that we worried about and fretted about and tried to track. Tell us a little bit about retention these days.
Sure, yeah. I think we're reminded every day from President Malk that enrollment is everyone's job at Bethany, right? And so we have a small retention team that meets once a week, and we kind of get in the weeds of students, not just, we're thinking of high-level strategies of helping students academically, helping students emotionally, helping students enroll for the next semester, but also in the weeds, targeting students who we know may have difficulties in one class, and so what strategy are we going to do for that? So, no, I mean, retention is something that we work on, every single day for sure, yeah.
Okay, we have another online question. It says, what will be the total cost to attend Bethany College this fall?
Yeah, depend on what resident hall a student staying in and what meal plan they're on, but approximately direct cost is $42,000. And that's without any scholarships, financial aid, which we know will reduce that overall cost. I think it's just 18 or 19. Correct. Yeah, but 18,000, 19,000 that a student actually pays.
Rumor has it that Amy Bauer should be given credit for the new signage.
I just want to add, there are additional signs coming, but that was an expensive project. So we will be adding as we can, so stay tuned.
And Amy should get the credit for it. This is something that she was very passionate about, and I think they really have helped our campus. They've helped not only for like 911 services, but just to have folks know, and I think they're very nice signs. So thank you, because that was something she wanted for several years.
When you've talked about curriculum changes and so on, is there planning or discussion about dropping interterm and going to a May term instead?
That one I'm excited about. It's a softball. I love that. I'm ready to stand up for that one. No more questions about interim ministers. Okay, so Maymester will be happening this coming academic year. So this previous academic year, which was 21-22, was our last year with interterm. For 22-23, what students will have is a fall semester, a spring semester that starts much earlier in January. Graduation will be moved way up for those of you who like to be here for that. Planned for the beginning of May. It's April 29th. So excited. And then we will have a 3-week summer term that would be available to students. The way to think about that Maymester summer term is it will operate much like our other summer terms, except there is a residential component that's available. So most of our summer curriculum is all online and only online. For May, we'll have a residential component to this. I know there are a handful of faculty who are planning a couple of more exciting offerings that I will not spill the beans on just yet, but they are actively underway. There are a number of other initiatives from faculty who work with general education, thinking about the ways in which a Maymester could be used to help keep students on track when perhaps that first semester you're here, you haven't quite figured out that college does also mean you go to class. But you're a really good student, and we've seen that progress in the second semester. Using the May term might be a really great way to help get those students on pace, both for financial aid and for academic purposes. So we're really excited that this will be our first year. We'll pilot a few things. We're going to see what works and what doesn't work. But we think it's a real net benefit for the college in the long term.
ask as many questions as you want.
Thank you. Is there any knowledge about the seniors that graduated this past month ago that indicated that started out here as freshmen versus how many were added during the school year, the 4 years? What about the retention of those that started here?
So, yes, there are really three numbers that we look at in that regard that are really important. And they're kind of inside the ballpark ways that we talk about this in higher ed, so I think it's helpful to sort of put these out for folks, right? We look at really two numbers, but those two numbers aren't two numbers, so hang there with me. One number that we look at is retention. And when we talk about retention, what we're really talking about is the student who enters in the fall, retaining through 2 semesters all the way to the next fall. Now at Bethany, in part of that work on making sure that retention is everybody's job and that we're really meeting this on a weekly basis, we actually subdivide that number out a number of ways so that we're measuring retention actively through the course of that entire first year. And so we have a couple of metrics that are internal to us. The number you're talking about, Dave, is what we would call persistence, right? So persistence to graduation.
That's right.
And that number is hard to track, and it doesn't seem like it would be hard to track, but it's the counting problem, right? And it's how you want to count it that matters, right? So I'll give you an example. I bet the number you're interested in is the kid who came to Bethany 4 years ago, showed up here as a freshman, and then graduated. But funny, the federal government isn't really interested in that number. And so they're not really particularly helpful in us keeping track of it. They're a lot more interested in any student who walked through the door that then graduates within 6 years from any other institution, right? And that's actually the metric that we get judged on. As you can imagine, tracking that is exceptionally difficult. And that is not just Bethany College's problem. That is a national problem that you can, I don't care which institution you go ask about it, they're going to say, boy, we are trying to figure out how best to do this, right? So right now, part of what we are doing is figuring out what's going to be the best way to present our data on exactly that question in a way that reflects both a number that works well for the college in terms of how we want to think about ourselves moving forward as part of the strategic plan, and also thinking about what our duty to the federal government is as an institution that takes federal aid and how we want to share that with folks. So I'm going to pass the buck on giving you the number because depending on how I calculate it, that number comes out really differently. And contextualizing that here would be really difficult. I would happily have a longer conversation or do a presentation about that for folks because I think it's really, really important. It's really important, and we are deeply vested in it. So there are actually about 2 or 3 other numbers that would be part of that we could talk about as well, and that's probably why I'm going to stop there. But I get excited about it.
Can we say something about athletics? I know that there's a number of new sports that are joining other universities or colleges that I think we're moving toward.
Like sports we would add? Is that what you're
Well, women's touch football? Or
yeah, flag football.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've certainly had some preliminary conversations of potential sports we'd be interested in adding. Flag football's probably towards the top of that list, as well as women's wrestling. Those would be the two I would emphasize the word preliminary conversations about. Flag football's an interesting one. I think this year will be really telling. This is kind of the biggest recruiting opportunity schools with flag football have is this incoming recruiting class coming in. So seeing how that impacts, I think our biggest question with flag football, and I think we had a similar question with it when we started esports, was are you able to recruit new students for that sport, or are you actually retaining your current students utilizing that sport? And that's an important differentiation on how that sport would actually affect the college. And both are certainly very positive things. You want to recruit new students and you want to retain your current students, but how those happen are certainly very different. So to be determined, but the two preliminary ones that we've looked at would be women's wrestling and women's flag football. So there's about 4 or 5 KCAC schools that are getting with flag football right now. So on the horizon, but nothing concrete. Good question, though.
Keep the microphone.
Yep.
Question for you, and then I'll go back to Adam. Of the 700 kids coming next fall, how many are athletes?
The typical percentage we use, this is a guesstimate, so nobody pin me down on exact responses here, but the typical guesstimate we utilize would be 70 to 80% of total enrollment are student athletes. Of that 325 goal for new students, the goal for athletics is 250. So what that will actually end up at, certainly to be determined, ask us in September, but that's the typical 77%, that's pretty close. 70 to 80% is the typical range that we say. Is it Adam's turn now?
Adam, the number that you did not give, the question is it high or low? And persistence to graduation or retention?
He's thinking.
Boy, the philosopher in me really doesn't like that question even a little bit. Because I would really like you to contextualize the context of high or low, because in an acontextual situation, those are meaningless terms. You'd get a C in my class. I don't know who asked the question, I'm just telling you. No, I don't think it's any secret that those numbers are lower than we want. That would be the way that I would put this, right? So, but let me talk about it in 2 phases. The retention of students, we have seen very consistent improvement, and that has been the internal goal for the institution. Is the number where we want it to be? No. Is the number significantly higher than it was 5 years ago? Yes. Okay? So I think that's the piece that we look for. That plan was set up on an incremental growth plan. So we looked for gaining somewhere between 1% and 3% in retention for the past 5 years in order to create a more stable environment for predicting budget allocations. That has happened. Again, within statistical margin of error. But right now is where we are starting to ask the same set of questions that we asked about retention with regard to persistence to graduation. And this is part of why I'm hemming and hawing about how to answer this question, is because if you look at our 6-year graduation rate, it is actually very comparable to any, I'm going to use more technical terms here, any Carnegie classification school that is in the same place as Bethany College. If you look at our 4-year graduation, it is lower. And that's a piece that we want to really focus on. But in the same way that we took retention and said, no, we need to do incremental growth and we need to get there, right? We now need to implement the same plan for persistence to graduation. So for me, one of the most happy things is that that weekly retention committee meeting that now Matt Fannensteel is running instead of me, and can be managed there, frees me up to think more about what it looks like to start focusing on issues of persistence. Those 2 things go hand in hand, right? You can't have persistence if your students are leaving after the 1st year. So it was an intentional plan to take this in phases as we move forward.
Are there new facilities being done for Bethany College right now or in the future?
That's a building question.
New meaning what?
Well, some of our facilities for athletics are pretty run down compared to other schools. Are they going to be improved? Football field, a new gymnasium, any of that stuff?
Yeah, so we are in the process of a campus master plan, which is a plan for the facilities for Bethany College. On that master plan will be plans to improve our athletics field. We're not quite ready to make announcements about that yet, but yes, those are on the docket to be improved. For right now, what we do know is that Warner will be back online this fall. As I think many of you have seen, the fences are up at Gregory, so Gregory Hall will have the same treatment that Warner Hall got last year, and we do have a couple other things that will be coming out soon, but we're not ready to announce yet. So. But yes, they're in the plan. Oh, the lock, thank you. Yes, and we do have the Joyce Pig locker room. That fundraising campaign is nearly complete, so that's been very successful for us, so that will happen this year. I forgot, but thank you. Anything else I'm missing? What? No, I'm not ready to make that announcement. There are other good news things coming that our facilities guy knows about, but that are not ready to announce yet.
How is the endowment fund doing?
Thank you very much for that question. So as you know, Bethany College many years ago had an endowment fund that was started. Its value at some point was around $28 million. It somehow got whittled down to 24 million, and at this point, it, as everybody knows, has been underwater for many years, meaning the value has not been there. We have made it a strategic priority to increase the amount of money in that endowment. Because today is June 30th, I don't exactly know what it was. On March 31st, it was about $6 million, which is a significant increase over 3 years ago when we were just under $4 million. I believe it's even more than that now, but I won't know that one until August. You have to come back on August 16th. We've also done a couple of other things with what is a quasi-endowment. I'm also not quite ready to make that announcement today, but in August 16th, if you come back, I'll have more information even about a quasi-endowment that the board has just approved at the last board meeting. And y'all can just look up what a quasi-endowment is, and then, you have better questions for the August meeting.
Question online, since 77% of the 700 students are athletes, how much of the school funding is allocated toward the athletic department?
Well, you have to remember that an athlete is a student athlete, and so when we think about educating all of our students, we think well-rounded for that. So I don't have that number right off the top of my head, but please remember that our student athletes are also going to classes, they are also living in residence halls, they're also eating in our cafeteria. So each one of our students has a total experience at Bethany College. The other part of this when we talk about path to your purpose is some of these athletics events that our students are participating in should be thought of as paths to your purpose. To have students who have an ability to participate in a team and doing teamwork is very important. Having students who have this opportunity to go and participate in games or maybe get to some of the finals for some of the things that we've been showing is also very important. So we look at, and I particularly look at, the whole experience for our student athletes as we're looking at that. So thank you.
Is there a significant increase in the number of or percentage of students who are going into music?
Actually, yes, this year there has been. I don't have those percentages. We have Haley Wesley isn't here tonight. She had to go and had some personal business to take care of, but she is our new Vice President of Enrollment Management, but she really is playing off of many of the things that Matt started when he was Vice President of Enrollment Management. We have made a decision to look at what we call general students. The general student population is typically mostly made up of our music and other fine arts majors. Because of some of the investments that we have made over the last couple of years, we have seen a significant increase in the number of music and art students that are coming to Bethany College this fall, and we're very pleased with that. Oh, yes, and yeah, that's my camera. and I'll brag about myself. The other thing that we've decided to do, Many times our alumni talk to us about the fact that they found Bethany College before they got to college by going to a camp or something. And so we've also been looking at opportunities for students to come to campus and do camps. Just this last week, we had 170 students in music who were on Bethany College's campus who had an opportunity to participate in music. I usually use Roper as my example because Roper came here for football and then graduated with a business degree and has been, on our board and very helpful even with some of our Path to Your Purpose initiatives. So Roper is my example for how successful these kinds of camps can be. And it doesn't mean that you have to be a football player if you actually come to Bethany College. Thank you.
If someone approached the president and said, I've got $2 million for the priority for a, how would you recommend if they say, what is your best first thing that you would want it to go toward?
As I have talked to donors, and let me just say, there are an awful lot of passionate friends and alums of Bethany College, and so I've had these conversations. I have always found that it is best to find out what the donors' priorities are, match them with what we at Bethany College find to be important, and then work together to realize those dreams. The kinds of things we at Bethany College are interested in are these Path to Your Purpose initiatives, ensuring that our students have opportunities not only in the class but out of the class. And because the other number we haven't talked about, nearly 50% of our students are Pell eligible, which means in a lower socioeconomic class, that sometimes means that they are not able to participate in some of these activities because of financial constraints around those. And so I would talk to donors about that. Most of our buildings on campus, have needs of upkeep and that, and we have a number of donors who are very passionate about bricks and mortar projects. And so we talk about what does that building mean. It was important to me to have Warner Hall renovated because we want to ensure that our students are having good experiences, not only in the classroom, not only on the athletics field, but we know that they also spend an awful lot of time in their residence halls, and so that was important, and that donor was passionate about that with us. So those are the kinds of conversations we have. We have donors who understand that Bethany has had challenges with its endowment, and so one of the things I sometimes talk to some of our donors about is, assisting us in growing that endowment. An endowment is so important because it allows you to, as my mother used to say, just live off the interest, and it allows us to continue to grow the corpus of what we have, but what we can take funds from that and actually have try out some things, have some exciting opportunities. So those are typically the three kinds of projects that we talk about, but I have found throughout my entire career that really ensuring that the donor will be proud of something out the back end, but that we all here find it something that's important to us is the most important part of fundraising.
Are you going to be replacing a full-time organist?
Yes, yes. Yeah, we have candidates. We'll have an interim organist this next year, and we will do a full-time search. So I don't. Yeah. Yeah, come back August 16th. We'll have. Will the organist play that day? Okay.
What are the discussions among the faculty and board with regards to expanding fields of study? All small four-year colleges have a challenge of keeping up with the new and quickly changing workforce.
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think the really great thing about being at a small, four-year liberal arts college, particularly at Bethany, maybe even more so than others, is that you can be nimble, right? And so one of the greatest advantages that we have are faculty who are always trying to stay one step ahead of pieces that are really important for folks going out into the workforce. Without fail, what we have seen over the past few years in workforce surveys is that soft skills are exceptionally important for college graduates. They need to be able to read, they need to be able to write, they need to be able to critically think, they need to be able to work in teams, and they need to be self-driven. Because because that lines up really well with any set of learning outcomes that you see for a particular major, let me say. It's really difficult to figure out how to create a curriculum that does that. So there are a couple of places where I think currently Bethany is trying out some ideas that I think are really exciting. The business department is trying out some work in entrepreneurship and sort of working on some pieces about how it is that you get business skills to students who aren't necessarily business majors, which I think is really exciting. I think our faculty over in fine arts, in digital arts, is doing some really, really interesting work in thinking about how we can work with students on creating portfolios that are designed to fit with the sorts of specific jobs that they're going to be applying for, and they're doing some really interesting work with Chad Moore and the local business community about ways that they can buff out those portfolios, which has really been a collaboration of the board with a faculty member, with a staff member on the campus. So those are two areas where I'm particularly excited. I think there are a few other places that you're seeing currently under development, or that we're getting ready to measure the fruits of changes that occurred. We had 4 programs rewrite their curriculums within the past 3 years, which is a pretty significant number, all of which aren't necessarily new majors, but are all course changes that go on to try and keep up with issues that are current for a particular field.
What kind of challenges have you had getting your own workforce, as all of us have had trouble maintaining a workforce?
You say the workforce? Yes, yeah. You know, I think we've been really fortunate here at Bethany College. Overall, we have been able to recruit and retain a number of staff members and faculty members that really share the passion that we all have here. And so we've been really lucky. And we're seeing the retention of those staff and faculty increase as well, which is very important to us also. I say every year at the board meeting when we make decisions on faculty tenure, I say these are the faculty members that your alums 30 years from now will be talking about. This person had a real impact on my life, and we're all very proud of that. Where we are still having challenges is in, Dean is here, facilities. So I should give a shout out to all of the volunteers, including, most importantly, Jim Turner, thank you, who have helped us with weeding and some grass mowing and that. So that has been an area that we've really struggled to recruit and retain folks in. But I don't, are there other? Yeah, facilities is probably our biggest one. And you know, we appreciate all of our alums and those in the community that help us keep Bethany really beautiful.
I heard today that Kiwanis is going to come up next Wednesday for a week.
Yay, thank you, Kiwanis. We really appreciate it. You know, to me, Bethany is a special place because you have folks that will just do that. You know, I was running home one day because I had forgotten my keys, and Jim was coming to just weed, and you know, people are coming early in the morning and they're just helping us out, and you know, that doesn't happen everywhere. So we really, really appreciate it. We'd like to figure out a better solution for it. We haven't really been able to yet, but you know, in the meantime, we really appreciate all the help people have given us.
The last 2 questions won't let me stay silent. One, soft skills to go out into the workforce. Anybody online and anybody who hires anybody. All these students are hireable today, and guess what? Most jobs can be done remotely. So if you are someone who works for an employer who has internship programs, encourage them to think of ways of doing it that you could reach out to Bethany students that don't require them to travel to or live in Kansas City or live in St. Louis. Like, talk to your employers, go to HR and say, can we do this remotely? Can we work with students? And it helps them with their soft skills, and it also fills a void in the workforce where, so I personally have 3 students working for me over the summer, and there's a lot of challenges working with students, of course, but it's extremely rewarding when they like pick up something and they're like, oh, that's how it really works. And so
I was just wondering about like this graduating class. Is there any way of knowing where they're going, whether they have found jobs? Do we know?
Yeah, one of the things that maybe you've seen in the news is the Path to Your Purpose office implemented something called Handshake, which is an online platform for our students to seek internships, jobs, and it's the leading online platform in the nation. Uniquely enough, that platform has what's called a senior survey that is industry standard. And so this is the first year in May, we had our seniors do that industry standard survey. We've been looking at the data. Some of our students are slow filling out that, some of our graduates are slow filling out that survey. But in August, we'll kind of report out what that 3-month data is, and we'll look at the 6-month data too, which is more of a standard of what colleges look at 6 months and a year out of what our students are doing. So not only does it track if they have a job before graduation, but it also identifies where our graduates are going off into grad school, if they're taking a year of service. So it's going to be a great survey. It's going to be great data that we're going to be able to share.
Because it's so important to us, we're going to make sure they fill it out next year. Krista's already got a plan. I think we've kept you about an hour now, so no other questions?
I have a plug. We just put an ad out a few days ago for part-time seasonal grounds help in the evenings and on Saturday morning for anybody that wants to earn a few extra dollars after their day job.
Yes. Well, I want to thank everybody who's online and everybody who was here this evening. You know, this team of people has really been who has helped us to keep Bethany College very vibrant and moving, and you know, there's so much for us to be proud of. We are looking forward to the fall. I won't say without COVID, because of course then I'll jinx myself, but we are really just looking forward to having our students back on campus, continuing to give them a quality experience. It's really what motivates us to do this job. And you know, I would like to thank everybody, the board and the cabinet, really for what they have done for all of us. So give them all a hand. I think we'd like to do these listening sessions in the future. We thought we would start to try to do them when the board was meeting anyway, so we didn't have to pull everybody here. So I believe our next listening session will be sometime in the vicinity of around October 20th or 21st or something, when the board will be back on campus. So that's our plan, to do another one of those at around that time. I'm surprising everybody, so I'm just saying this now. So, but we thought that might be a way to have it so that you have regular contact. But we are interested in having any one of you, and we won't have the live stream, I don't believe, for the all-campus meeting. But if any of you are going to be in town, we'll be in here. I will have more information on last year's budget and final numbers, the endowment, this quasi-endowment, which everybody can go research. We'll have more information about the Path to Your Purpose and what's happening. The board has approved it. We're now just sort of getting it into a nicer, neater format. So if you want to come and learn a lot about Bethany, if you're not able to come, then it is my intention to drop a video so you can just watch the shorter version of it on August 16th. So, and then I think we're going to have a lunch afterward. I'll even invite people for the lunch afterwards. So come at 10:30 on the 16th. And we're also going to have Warner Hall's dedication on August 11th at 11. So we'd love to show everybody Warner Hall that day. The furniture's here and in, and yes, so the furniture was kind of delayed a little bit, but the furniture's here, that's ready to go. So we're excited about all of the new things that are going to go on at Bethany College. So thank you all for coming.
Hey, Mike, good to